So earlier this week, I managed to complete Star Wars Outlaws, and when I made my non-spoiler review, after about 15 hours worth of gameplay, I did say that when I'd finished the game, I would come back and do a full-on spoiler review, and that's what this is. Now, in total, I managed to get through about 35 hours of gameplay. And again, this is going to contain full-on spoilers, so if you don't want to have anything, not that there's a lot to be spoiled on, to be honest, but if you don't want to have anything spoiled, you want to go check out my non-spoiler review, because the recommendation as to whether to get the game or not is pretty much the same. What I'm going to do here is talk about, more in depth about what I enjoyed or didn't enjoy, what kind of changed between that non-spoiler review and now, and my kind of general experience, and what I would do to improve the game if I had the chance to. So let's just talk about, again, the idea of how much gameplay is in this, game itself. There is a good chunk. Now, the main story probably tallies up to about 20 hours in total. That's probably about how much time I took to get through the main story itself, all the main quests. And, you could probably do it a little bit quicker. I wasn't in a rush to complete it. And, but likewise, you could probably take longer if you wanted to explore some of the environments. The side quests, though, were where there was a lot more content available if I wanted to play it. Now, I did most of the major side quests. I got all of the, additional crew members. I didn't quite go and do all of the syndicate missions because, to me, I wasn't massively interested. I'm not a completionist. I didn't need all of the cosmetics, and I had, by the end of the game, about 17,000 credits, and I couldn't spend them, so there was no, financial incentive to complete any of those side quests, but I did the majority of the main ones. I did a vault just to kind of see what you got, and again, like I thought, there was a good chunk of credits in there, some cosmetics for doing that, but overall, I kind of left most of the vaults as they were. So in terms of overall, time on the game, there's plenty here for you to get your teeth into and to keep busy on if you really want to. I'd probably say there's closer to 50 hours of content. And then once you're done there, they've got more stuff coming out later on, and you can sit around, play a few games of Sabacc, or, bet on the Favia races, or maybe just fly around and kill a few Imperials. There's definitely stuff that you can do even after the main missions are completed, and I'm sure even after the side quests are mostly done. So there's plenty to do in the game itself. That's not necessarily a problem. You're never really going to get too bored in terms of not being able to find stuff to do. And again, as I mentioned in my first video, the maps themselves are hugely expansive. I managed to get to all the planets, investigate almost all of the areas, Tatooine obviously being the largest of the maps and the most detailed. And again, they did a fantastic job at recreating not just the actual physical locations, but the feel, the vibe, of the planets, and make them interesting. Tatooine clearly is going to be the one that was the biggest because that's the one that most people can relate to. But for me, I was more interested in the aesthetic of Kijimi. I really loved Akiva as a planet. Just again, the general kind of jungle look was really something that I took to more than the desert planet of Tatooine. Although I will say, the travelling around Akiva was a bit frustrating because you had not only rivers, but, mountains and hills. So trying to get around was a little bit difficult on this speeder bike that isn't the most responsive thing in the world. So, yeah, in terms of, the maps themselves, they're huge, they're expansive, they're really well designed. They look fantastic. The game itself, no matter what level you're on for the graphics, the game is beautiful. And, I've seen people complain about the character models. That really doesn't bother me that much. The actual surroundings, the environment, that was rich in detail and looked fantastic. And so, for me, that mattered more than, the character's face and whether the main character is supposedly attractive or not. Don't fall into those arguments because at the end of the day, everyone is different as to what they find, pleasing to look at, I guess. And some people are just going to make bad faith arguments because, Kay had an 80s haircut. And unless you actually were around during the 80s or you're well entrenched in the 80s style, you're never going to quite get it. It looks terrible now because it's the 80s. Just as things now might seem terrible in 40 years' time. But I thought, in terms of the visuals, the game did really, really well. So in terms of what I enjoyed, that's kind of, everything. The story was okay. I like the twist of having Sleero and Jalen be related, and that's really what this is all about. There is no big score. Again, I was kind of disappointed in that because I even called it. I said as we were getting towards the end of that final mission and we were getting close to the vault, I said, you watch, this is going to be the same old thing where there is actually no big score. It's about the friends we made along the way, and someone's going to try and stick a knife in our back. And that's exactly what happened. So in terms of the story, nothing groundbreaking, a little cliched, which I can kind of take or leave. But it was fun to play through. Like that final mission with ND5 chasing you down was really spooky, especially for me because my game crashed during the cutscene. And so I had no context as to why all of a sudden this commando droid is chasing me down, telling me to run, but not in the way, it's like, run, I'm gonna murder you. It's like, run because I am going to murder you and I can't stop myself. I don't want you to die. That made it so much more spooky because I didn't get the context for it. So that was great in terms of, building in the tension in that kind of a mission. And that's what I really liked. That was a bit of variety because the missions themselves don't have a great deal of variety in the larger picture. It's very much about going to a place, sneaking in or fighting your way in, taking something and making an escape. That's what 90% of the missions tend to be about. So when you get one of those other missions that's in the 10% that's not that, it's quite exciting because, you get to do something that you wouldn't normally get to do. And as someone who isn't the best at stealth, I prefer just to shoot my way through. It was a little frustrating to see that many missions there, but it didn't take away massively from my enjoyment of the game. Now, talking about obviously what I've enjoyed there, space combat as well. I'd add space combat to the mix. That was pretty fun, but again, it was sparse. If you didn't actually just go out and start shooting people. Sabok and the Favia racing were great additions. I was fantastic, and I love the fact that my very last hand of Sabok was the very first time I got pure Sabok. That was the last hand of the last round of the last game that I played, and I thought I can't end any better than that. Winning the final game on the final hand with the best hand you can get was brilliant, and so I really enjoyed that aspect of it. So let's turn to things that I thought could have been improved upon. So first and foremost, the syndicate system. Now, the syndicate system doesn't realistically tie in any tangible way to the main story. It simply gives you the ability to either access areas with more or less trouble, depending on whether you're in favor with that particular syndicate or not, which most of the places are fairly easy to navigate around, so it's not a massive issue if you're not in favor with that particular syndicate. Sure, it'll save you about 5 minutes of having to sneak around. It again gives you some discounts at the stores, but I very rarely found there was anything in the stores that I really truly wanted. Again, for those who love cosmetics, then this is kind of more your thing, because again, that's what the rewards really are. Some of the exclusive items at the vendors and the merchants for the syndicates were very much cosmetics. The rewards for getting excellent standing was a set of cosmetics and some credits. But realistically, other than a short little cutscene at the end where, a clan shows up to help, doesn't make a difference. Doesn't make a massive difference. And that's what I was really looking for when I first found out there was going to be a syndicate, system. I was looking for it to tangibly change the way the game would go, depending on which syndicate you chose to align with. Ironically, I've seen people do all different paths. I've seen people who have all gone excellent for every single one. I've seen people who, again, despise the pikes, so have gone excellent in everyone except for the pikes. I was the opposite way around. I wanted to try and be counter-culture, so I actually went into the terrible for Crimson Dawn, and I actually went into the excellent for the pikes, because it's the kind of opposite of what everyone else was doing. And I didn't find the experience was any different for me. Again, just certain areas were easier to get into than others. And honestly, Crimson Dawn, like the Ashiga clan, not a massive part of the game. In terms of where they're based. The pikes and the huts are definitely the biggest syndicates, so they are the ones that you really want to be on side with to gain access to certain areas. So I was really disappointed that was not as immersive as I'd hoped. And the same with the wanted system for the Empire. Again, that was one of the things they talked up coming into this game, was it's going to be like a GTA-style wanted system. And, if you commit a crime, the Empire's going to come after you. If you get, like, the top rating, Death Troopers are going to come after you. So in our heads, we're all thinking, yes, this is great, this is GTA in space. In reality, once again, outside of a couple of missions where the Empire is directly involved, you could go hours and hours and hours without even, getting a single wanted level. And it doesn't matter how much crime you commit, if the Empire's not there, they don't care. And yeah, that's kind of realistic. It's a fascist system. They're occupying worlds with limited, numbers, so they probably aren't going to be massively bothered by petty crime. Unless you actually go and steal from the Empire or attack a stormtrooper, they're probably not going to bother to come after you. So it's kind of realistic, but it's also kind of underwhelming. And again, the top level wanted system. The one time that I actually was trying to escape from the Empire after a mission where you've got, like, say a 5 out of 6, and you've got all of these troopers coming after you, you've got TIE fighters flying in, that was kind of great. I was like, yeah, I've got to try and escape from these troop transports, and I might have TIE fighters coming in to shoot at me. But the top level, the Death Troopers, really were underwhelming. Like, you have to go to them. That doesn't make sense. Like, a bunch of sort of Death Troopers land knowing that you are this top-rated wanted criminal, and they just sit around waiting for you. And it's like, yeah, if you want a challenge, go to them and fight them, but why would you? Like, other than to get an achievement or a cosmetic, it's like, okay, it seems a bit redundant. It doesn't seem like there's much point in having them there. So again, that was kind of underwhelming, not just because that top level wasn't what it should be, but also because it just wasn't as prevalent in general gameplay, which is kind of how it was touted to be. Again, a little bit hollow, and that's kind of how I'd best describe Star Wars Outlaws, is good in concept. It's got decent amount of core stuff, but then most of it's just hollow. It's kind of like you make your own adventure out of it, depending on what you like and how imaginative you are and how invested you are in an open world. And as someone who doesn't really play open world games that much, I wasn't massively invested, and I didn't have a great deal of motivation to go and complete the side quests outside of, like, the ones that might get you the main characters. And speaking of, like, the main characters, like ND5, fantastic character, loved him. I was kind of worried when we got to the halfway point in the game, and I was like, oh, we haven't met him yet, what's going on? But when you do meet him, immediately take a liking. Like, he's fantastic, and again, by far and away, I think the best droid companion in any of the games. I know people are going to be like, but BD1, it's like, no, ND5. Nix is, again, the best little companion. Sorry, BD1, Nix wins it. Those damned, like, scenes where you're getting the food, amazing, loved them so much. But for the rest of the crew, like, again, trying to put together your own heist crew, I kind of wanted them to be involved earlier. I wanted them to be involved more. Like, all you do is go and do a quest to get them, and then they sit around on the ship not doing much until the final mission. And so by the end of it, you don't really kind of feel an attachment to them, because they are just kind of a side story. I kind of would have liked to have seen you do the opening introductory mission, and straight from that point, you have to go and get your companions. And those companions are involved in a lot of the main stories, doing different things. But by the end of it, it was kind of like, okay, well, as long as ND5 and Nick stay alive, I'm good. Anyone else can die. It'd be sad, but, I'm not that bothered. And I think about Jedi Survivor and how, even though it wasn't a kind of team-up style game, you had all those characters in the tavern who I would have died if any of them got hurt. Tergel, Scuba Steve or Skeeve, I can't remember his name, but I would kill for them in the same way I'd kill for Nix. But I didn't feel that for any of the other companions outside of ND5. So I was kind of like, well, that's again disappointing, because this whole thing is building up to a heist, and yet we're not getting that immersive interaction with the rest of the crew. And so, again, a little bit hollow from that perspective. And considering that the game had 3.5 years of development, you kind of hope for more from the meat of the story, but it wasn't to be. Again, the little bits of cameos, the Vader stuff, I kind of just rolled my eyes at. The Vader appearance, I was like, oh, here we go again. And that's really where we're at with Darth Vader now. Like, it's kind of sad that we have to bring this up in the week where James Earl Jones died. because, again, he was such a kind of fantastic force in not just Star Wars, but in the world of, film and TV in general. But, kind of to get to the point where we're mourning his loss and I'm having to talk about Vader in a negative light, kind of, it feels a bit wrong, but I have to do it because it's part of the game experience. And again, it was very much a cliche appearance. It's like Vader shows up, threatens a random Imperial. It's supposed to be for the shock value, like, oh, look, it's Darth Vader. And again, it's kind of like, I could really do without that. It's a wasted cameo. I would have taken someone like, Grand Admiral Sloane, like Ray Sloane, as a better cameo. I'd have been more excited for that, because it's someone you don't see very often. Sure, yeah, they're not a Dark Lord of the Sith, but I don't need to see a Dark Lord of the Sith in every game. I don't need a Dark Lord of the Sith in every bit of Star Wars content I consume. I like the diversity of it. I like to see Temmin Wexley, Snap, who, again, disappointed that Bones wasn't with him as B1 Battle Droid. But it was great to see him in his younger years, and it's a nice little tie-in to, the later stories. Again, for anyone not aware, Snap Wexley, the kind of Resistance pilot who's good friends with Poe in the sequels, that's him, Temmin Wexley. And so, stuff like that I appreciated. It felt even worse because I felt like the voice was just not. And again, James L. Jones passed away this week, so I really hate speaking about this specifically because, he was the voice of Vader. And the last thing that I want to advocate for is kind of like any augmented AI voice, because I can't really get down with that. I'd rather, again, us not have it at all. But it was a poor imitation of Vader. And the same for Lando. When Lando showed up, looked like Lando, had the same outfit that you'd expect from him, did not sound like Lando whatsoever. And that kind of takes you out the experience. So it's those moments where they're trying to lure you in with the cameos, and for one reason or another, I'm just taken out of it. And I'm just kind of like, okay, you're doing that member berry, but it doesn't work on me because you've done it so many times. And I kind of half expect it. And that's what I mean by kind of like being disappointed at the fact that these cliches just seem to repeat themselves. The idea that you are going to be someone who is morally grey in the underworld, and actually you just turn out to be someone who is actually pretty good, doesn't get the big score, earns a lot of friends, and we learn that they've got a heart of gold. It's like, yeah, that's a nice story, but it's a story that's repeated ad nauseum. Give me the scoundrel who goes and runs their own syndicate. I said this, I want a sequel where I am the head of the syndicate and I've just got to choose which minions to send where, how to spend all my millions of credits, and how to negotiate with the Empire so that they don't try and, crack down on me. Essentially, I wanted it to be like a syndicate simulator in a sequel. But you're not put into that position because Kay is too good, she doesn't get the big score, and it's just kind of like, okay, well, it is what it is, I guess. It's kind of standard. And that's what I'd say about this game. It's pretty standard. It's pretty okay. The combat system is okay. It's repetitive. It's not boring. They try to give you plenty of different enemies to fight, but again, it's just kind of like, okay. And again, the customization options, there's no skill tree, really. You get 3 different customization options for most things, and even then, they're fairly bare bones. Like, you don't get any abilities that you can choose to customize on your own. Like, you get upgrades to the existing, again, bare bones upgrades to the existing abilities you have, but you don't have full control or customization of the character themselves. And it disappointed me with the cosmetics because a lot of the cosmetics are tied up in certain perks. So I chose the Kajimi outfit that looks a bit like the Hoth Rebel outfit, like the white coat and the white trousers, because it helped reduce damage and it prevented fatal damage, I think, once. And that was great. That was what I really wanted. And I couldn't find, although I liked the look of other cosmetics, I couldn't find any perks they were attached to that really outdid what I had. So I was stuck with this, costume all the way through. That looked ridiculous on Tatooine because I'm wearing, cold weather clothes in a desert environment. And there's some really good looking cosmetics that I really wanted to try, but I thought, well, I don't want to lose these perks because they're really protecting me. So I'd say that the diversity of gameplay and customization really suffered. But it was fun. Going back to a really good point is the immersion of the Star Wars world. And that's why I say people will experience this differently depending on how much they really love Star Wars. If you're playing this just because it's an open world Ubisoft game, you're probably not going to find it to be very compelling. You probably will think it's average. And that's a fair, I think, point to take on. It is an average open world game. Nothing special, nothing terrible. And if you're a Star Wars fan and you're looking for the Star Wars experience and to be immersed in the world of Star Wars, that's going to bump your experience right up. That's probably going to bump your, review right up. And that's what it kind of did for me. The last thing I'll talk about is, again, the performance issues. Now, I was having issues initially with rendering of textures and slow loading times. I did manage to fix that by installing the game on a faster SSD, which is strange because I've never had to do that before. And I know there's been a couple of hotfixes come out to try and better optimize the game for PC, and specifically for the CPU usage, because a couple of times it was hitting 100% for me, despite the fact it shouldn't. I've got a powerful enough CPU to handle a game like this. And it appears to be, common for every AAA game now where it's not properly optimized for PC. They concern themselves with the console version more. The PC one is left to kind of pick up the pieces, wait for patches, wait for hotfixes before it actually gets, to be properly playable without any major issues. And that's what this was like. So after solving those initial issues, the game went on okay for a while, but then I found it started to crash on certain days. So one day it'd be fine, and then I'd boot up the stream the next day, and it would be crashing every 15-20 minutes, and there was no reason for it other than it was making my CPU hit 100%. And there was no reason I could find. I'd verified the game files, I'd uninstall and reinstall, nothing fixed it. Then the next day it'd be fine, and it'd be fine for a couple of days, and it happened again on the last stream, and I timed it was like every 13 to 14 minutes the game would crash, and it really did start to affect my enjoyment, because it'll take you back to your last checkpoint, and most of the time your checkpoint isn't too far away. There's a couple of big missions where it is, but where it really affected me was during the cutscenes, because again it would skip you forward. And like I say, I missed out on that big reveal for the brothers and ND5 because my game crashed in the middle of the cutscene. And so, those little problems, they tend to add up and they tend to take away from the experience. It doesn't ruin the game, but it takes away, at least a point for me if I'm scoring on a points basis. And so I hope that they fix those, and I don't expect much from future games for that not to be an issue. It seems to be that is a continuing thing now, but it's more concerning to me that standard SSDs are becoming, outdated because, they're expensive SSDs. So I really don't want it to go down that route. Overall, though, trying to tie up this in a nice little bow, I'd say that I enjoyed the game, and my recommendation remains that although I wouldn't say buy this flat out, try it on Ubisoft Plus, get it for a month for a fraction of the price, give it a go and see if you enjoy it. Again, you should be able to do it in about 30 hours if you want to, just touch on the side quests a little bit. Don't spend more than the base price. The cosmetics aren't worth it. I don't know what the bonus missions that are coming up are going to be like the side quests that they're going to add on. But overall, I'd say this was like a 6, 7 out of 10. Maybe 6.5 out of 10 we'll give it overall. So again, average, okay, not terrible. And, don't pay attention to the people out there saying it's a flop. It sold terribly. We don't know how well or how bad it sold. There's no sales figures yet, other than incomplete physical sales in one country, which isn't anything to go off of. Stock prices don't matter. Stock prices for Ubisoft have been going down for the last 6 months, so it's nothing new. So don't let other people influence your mindset coming into this game, because if you come into this game with a negative mindset, you're probably not going to enjoy it as much. Come into it thinking that you'll give it a chance, see how it goes. Like I say, that's why the benefit of having Ubisoft Plus is you don't have to spend $20 to give the game a go, rather than spending $70 plus. So that's my thoughts anyway. I do want to say thank you to everyone who showed up and supported the streams. I'm hoping to do that again with some of the more retro games going forward, and for any games that do end up coming out in the future. I really did enjoy it, and so hopefully there'll be more. But if you want to go back and watch them, they are on the live section of the channel right now. So again, once again, let me know what you thought of the game if you played through it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you for the next video.